At 25, Isabelle Moore was fiercely intelligent, quietly beautiful, and endlessly persistent. After graduating top of her class in business law, she landed a prestigious role at Vanguard International, a global corporate empire known for its billion-dollar acquisitions and near-impossible standards. Everyone wanted to work there. Everyone, that is, except those who knew the man at the top. Damien Blackwood was a legend, and not for reasons one would admire. He had taken over Vanguard after the mysterious death of his father, turning a successful company into a juggernaut through aggressive takeovers and merciless terminations. Damien was tall, with striking steel-gray eyes, always in impeccably tailored suits and always surrounded by fear. They called him the Ice King, a man without compassion or warmth, known for firing employees mid-meeting, intimidating board members, and running a company like a war camp. Isabelle had heard the rumors. She had been warned. But what no one knew was that Isabelle had a secret reason for joining Vanguard. Her father, once a brilliant software developer, had been crushed by one of Damien Blackwood's corporate raids 5 years ago. Left bankrupt and humiliated, he had spiraled into depression, dying 2 years later. Isabelle never forgot. And though she had mourned, her grief had fermented into something sharp. She didn't just want to work for Damien. She wanted to understand him, and bring him to his knees. Isabelle's first encounter with Damien was exactly as she expected. She was assigned as a junior analyst under his direct leadership, part of a specialized high-potential program. He walked into the boardroom that day like a storm in a suit. Cool. Calculated. Beautiful in the way a knife might be. His voice was smooth and commanding, each word designed to suppress and dominate. "You're Isabelle Moore?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You look soft." "I'm not," she replied, lips tightening. His smirk was cold. "We'll see." Over the weeks, Isabelle experienced his wrath firsthand. He was ruthless, cutting her down in meetings, dismissing her ideas without a second glance, demanding perfection, and pushing her far beyond her limits. But instead of crumbling, Isabelle pushed back. Quietly. Strategically. She challenged him in subtle ways, correcting minor errors in his projections, improving his strategies with understated revisions. He noticed, though he never acknowledged it aloud. One night, after she worked until nearly 3 a.m. cleaning up an emergency on a European merger, he appeared in the office lounge, leaning against the counter as she poured a stale cup of coffee. "You don't quit easily," he murmured, voice low. She didn't look at him. "Should I?" He stepped closer, his presence unnerving. "Most do." "Intrigue me, Miss Moore." From that moment, something began to shift. Damien stopped treating her like a pawn and began watching her, testing her. He invited her into higher-level meetings, trusted her with confidential projects. And through these long nights and early mornings, Isabelle saw glimpses of the man beneath the armor. Once, after a late dinner meeting, she found him alone on the rooftop of Vanguard's Manhattan Tower, staring into the night. "You know," he said, "everyone assumes I'm a monster. Maybe they're right." She hesitated. "Or maybe you've just forgotten what it means to be human." He turned to her, eyes haunted. "What do you think happened to a man who once dreamed of building shelters for children in war zones, but ended up buying oil fields instead?" She didn't answer. But her presence was answer enough. As winter came, their relationship deepened. Whispers filled the office about late-night meetings and stolen glances. Damien was still cold with everyone else, but toward Isabelle he was different. Reserved, careful, yet almost tender. Their first kiss was accidental, born of a late-night argument in his office when emotions ran high. It was fire meeting frost. From that night everything changed. They became inseparable. But Isabelle's mission still lingered like a shadow. Every night she wrote in her journal, "Remember what he did. Remember why you came." Then one day she stumbled upon a locked folder in Damien's private server while compiling data. What she saw shattered everything. There was a name, her father's. And emails, revealing that Damien had tried to stop the raid on her father's company. He had argued with the board, even offered to pay part of the debt himself. But his father, Leonard Blackwood, had overruled him just weeks before his mysterious death. Damien had buried it all. Suddenly, the man she had been trying to hate was not her enemy. He had tried to save her family, and she had fallen in love with him. But fate is cruel. One morning, Damien stormed into her office, fury written across his face. "Why were you digging through my private archives?" "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said. "I just needed to know the truth." He stepped back, betrayed. "Was this all a game to you? You seduced me to get revenge?" "No. Damien, I came here to destroy you, yes. But I fell in love with you instead." He shook his head. "You were the only person I trusted. And you broke me." That day he disappeared from Vanguard. The board announced an indefinite leave of absence. Rumors spread, scandal, heartbreak, accompanying crisis. Isabelle was left shattered. After Damien's disappearance, Vanguard fell into turmoil. The board struggled to maintain stability, clients withdrew, and whispers of scandal plagued the media. But none of that mattered to Isabelle. Her world had fractured in a much more personal way. Every day she asked herself the same question. Had she done the right thing? She had uncovered the truth, yes, but at the cost of a man's trust and perhaps even his love. Despite her original intentions, she had grown to care for Damien more than she ever thought possible. Not as a symbol of vengeance, but as a deeply wounded man, someone trying in his own flawed way to do right. Weeks turned into months. Isabelle moved back to her small hometown in Connecticut, her spirit dimmed. She took a job teaching night classes on corporate ethics. Ironic, she often thought, given the ethical war she had fought within herself. Then one day a familiar name appeared in a news headline. Damien Blackwood sells majority stake in Vanguard to fund Global Youth Foundation. The article explained that Damien had resigned from the board completely and had launched the Blackwood Moore Initiative, named not after himself, but after her. Isabelle's knees buckled as she read the words. He hadn't vanished. He had transformed. 6 months passed before she heard from him again. It came in the form of a single elegant envelope with a wax seal, just like the one from months before. This time the card read, "Opening night. Paris. Le Théâtre Lumière. Box 7. I hope you'll be there. D." Her heart pounded. Paris? Inside was a second card. An invitation to a gala supporting the new foundation, hosted by the city of Paris in honor of Damien's humanitarian contributions. Torn between fear and hope, she packed her suitcase. Paris was alight with celebration that night, but Isabelle's heart was in chaos. She arrived at Le Théâtre Lumière, dressed in a simple black gown. The ushers directed her to Box 7, high above the main floor. As she stepped in, she found it empty. Then a familiar voice from behind her. "You came." She turned slowly. Damien stood in the doorway looking transformed. His hair was longer, his jaw less sharp, and his eyes, soft. He no longer wore his cold armor. Tonight he was simply a man. "I wasn't sure I should," she said softly. "I wasn't sure you would," he replied. "But I hoped. Every day." Silence hung between them like music. "I've thought about you," she said, her voice trembling. "About us. About what we lost. And what we might still have," he offered, stepping closer. "I was angry, Isabelle. Hurt. But in the quiet months after you left, I realized something. You didn't break me. You woke me up." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't?" "Not really." He reached for her hand. "You loved me. And that scared me more than anything." A tear slipped down her cheek. "So, what now?" He smiled gently. "Now we begin again." The next year was one of healing. Damien sold his penthouse and moved into a modest home overlooking a vineyard in Bordeaux. Isabelle split her time between her ethics work and helping him run the foundation. They traveled to Ghana, Brazil, and Nepal, supporting schools, technology initiatives, and youth empowerment programs. And they took their love slowly. There was no pressure. No more games. They cooked dinner together. Read books by the fire. Took long walks under the stars. The man who once ruled boardrooms with icy glares now laughed at cheesy jokes and kissed Isabelle's forehead before every meeting. But not all was perfect. At one gala in London, Isabelle was confronted by a former Vanguard board member. "You really tamed the beast," the woman sneered. "How long until he reverts?" Isabelle smiled. He wasn't a beast. Just a man in pain. And pain, unlike love, doesn't last forever. Just as life seemed peaceful, a letter arrived. From Gregory Vance, a corporate spy who had worked under Damien's father years ago. The contents were shocking. Gregory had proof that Leonard Blackwood, Damien's father, had orchestrated not just the hostile takeover of Isabelle's father's company, but the sabotage that led to his death. And worse, Gregory had learned that Damien had been framed for the final decision by his father's inner circle. That decision had haunted him for years. "I always knew my father wasn't innocent," Damien murmured as he read the file. "But I never knew he tried to destroy you." Isabelle's hands trembled. "And you spent years believing you failed." He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I didn't deserve your love back then. But now I want to earn it. Every day." And so they did. Together, they used Gregory's evidence to clear Damien's name. In a public press conference, Damien confessed his past mistakes and spoke with raw honesty about his transformation, not as a redemption story, but as a testimony to the power of forgiveness, love, and second chances. On a quiet spring morning under a canopy of cherry blossoms, Damien got down on one knee. "I was lost when I met you," he said. "And you found me. Not by changing me, but by seeing the good I had forgotten existed." Isabelle nodded through tears. "You taught me forgiveness. You taught me that even those we fear most can love deeply. Will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Their wedding was held in the vineyard, attended by orphans they'd sponsored, students they'd mentored, and even former Vanguard employees who now ran ethical startups thanks to their guidance. As they danced under the stars, Damien whispered, "You were never my weakness. You were always my light." Years later, in a sunlit library of their home, Isabelle wrote a memoir titled The Ice King's Heart. It became a bestseller, not for the drama but for its message. This is a love story born not in fairy tales but in shadows. It's the story of how even the hardest hearts can soften, and how the greatest battles aren't fought in boardrooms, but in the silent spaces between grief, trust, and hope. Damien walked in, their daughter toddling beside him, and kissed Isabelle's cheek. From vengeance to redemption. From pain to purpose. And above all, from shadows to love.